Welcome to TMI Today with Rita and Jen Lee. In this podcast, there is no such thing as too much information. We are diving into all of the taboo topics, from money and careers to relationships and parenting, to whatever else we've been too afraid to discuss as women. Listen in and join the movement as we raise each other up in our everyday lives.
Welcome, everybody, to TMI, today's motivational insights, where it's never too much information for the information that you're going to receive today. And I am Rita Bacuzzi, also known as Mama Rita Money, and I have the fabulous Jen Lee, financial stress reduction attorney extraordinaire. So I am super excited, always joining forces with women in empowerment so that we can make our lives be better. I'm going to say with fun, flow, and ease. And today we have an exceptionally special guest. Her name is Dr. Lois Frankel. Just saying her name, I know some people are going to go, I know Lois, because I get that every time I mention Lois's name. And I've had the blessing of knowing Lois personally through some philanthropic work. And Lois's message and her journey is definitely something to be shared. She is a well-known author. I'm going to say the one that I know most famously is, well, Nice Girls Don't Get Rich, or Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. And one thing that I really loved about Lois that recently I remember hearing her speak on and having discussion on is about having our voice heard as well. And so Lois, I am happy to welcome you here on behalf of Jen and I. And we just want you to feel welcome and maybe share a little bit of your journey so that this way we can connect and help our listeners just maybe, I'm going to say, feel like they get connected with the better version of themselves and how they can do that.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for having me on. It's a delight to be here, Rita and Jen, and I am happy to help your listeners however I can.
Thank you. And that's the giving nature of Lois. She is just amazing. And I've known her, I think it's almost been, well, maybe over 5 years, maybe 8, closer to 8. I'm not sure.
I think so.
It's been longer. It's so good friendships. They feel like they've been this short, bitty time. And then you look back and you're like, whoa, where'd that all go?
Yep.
So what are you currently up to, Lois? What, and maybe share, yes, what you're currently up to and how you got there, the journey there.
Sure. What I'm currently up to is I'm just kind of waiting to hear about from my publisher a 20th anniversary edition of Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office.
Woo!
And it's hard to believe it's been 20 years. And frankly, I wouldn't have known it unless somebody told me, because I just don't pay attention to those things. But, a lot has happened over the last 20 years. And I think an update would be great. I did a 10th anniversary edition and I added 33 new mistakes. And for people who don't know my books, they are mistakes women make. And then there's the solution. What do you have to do differently? And so, as a matter of fact, I'll just mention this. Rita and I were at a fundraiser on Sunday. And this woman I didn't know ran up to me and she said, Dr. Frankel, because of you, I stopped putting candy on my desk. Because one of the tips is women shouldn't have candy on their desk because it overemphasizes their femininity. You don't have to overemphasize it. You are a woman, and that's great, and you shouldn't underemphasize it. But when you feed people, it really makes them think of you as a mother. So anyway, I said, did it work? She said, yeah, I got promoted. So that was kind of a fun thing. So much has happened in the last 20 years that I'll probably talk about. Now, the second part of your question was, how did I get there? And because, Rita, you talk about money so often, I want to talk about this too. And I think people look at me sometimes and make assumptions. I think they think, oh, she's got this PhD, I know that she's very generous with causes. And I think people make some assumptions about how I must have grown up, that maybe I grew up with wealth or, in a family that had some money. Nothing could be further from the truth. I grew up in a lower middle class family. I remember when I was in, I don't know, it was maybe third grade, my bedroom was in the dining room. My bed was in the dining room because there was only 2 bedrooms and the boys got the bedrooms. And there was a train that went behind our apartment. It was an apartment. And so that train acted as my alarm clock every morning. I knew what time I had to get up. And so, I didn't come from a family of wealth. And I didn't even start thinking about, and I'm going to use the term wealth intentionally, not about money, because my family always had to think about money. If you're thinking about money, you're not thinking about wealth too. Money is what you need to get by. And that's kind of how my family was, always just trying to get by. And so, but I was in my 30s when I started thinking about wealth. And at that time, I had started my own business. And I realized because I was a sole proprietor, I could only earn as much as hours in a day that I could work. And as a consultant, you don't work 8 hours or 10 hours with clients 5 days a week. You work 10, 12 hours, but those aren't billable hours, right? And so when I started thinking about it, I thought, the only way I'm really going to acquire any wealth here is if I have other people working for me. And if I raise my prices, which I was like really hesitant to do. And yet I did all the things I thought that I should do, not that I necessarily was comfortable doing. And Rita and Jen, they all paid off. They all paid off. Because as soon as I started thinking bigger, I started acting bigger. And as soon as I started doing that, I started attracting bigger clients. And so my motto became, I only want clients who don't look at the checkbook when they write the check.
Ooh, I love that.
Right? And that's what I focused on. So I focused on working with Fortune 500 companies. And that's exactly who we work with. I work with individual clients too, but I do that on a pro bono basis because if I know they can't afford me, I'm happy to do that. But for the people who can't afford it, I always feel like a little bit like Robin Hood. I rob from the rich and to give to the poor. And I have no problem with that. And so that's kind of how I got to where I am. I hope I answered that question.
Oh, you did. That was beautiful. And I love the way that you're expressing it. And, you're speaking to a lot of the entrepreneurs in the world. And, every person has a place in a position where they get to be. So not everybody is meant to be an entrepreneur.
No.
And we need everybody in the world. We need, the people who street sweep. We need the people who clean and caretake and all that. Those are essential people. It's just that we get to have different positions. So funny when you were talking about the non-billable hours. I always think about like when people go into movie shoots or into plays, they're doing all this prepping in their skill, or ice skaters or whatever. And athletes, they're prepping in their skill for the payout that is, much bigger. And I like the uncapped earning thing. But for some people, maybe sometimes they get to start out with that safety net and then bridge out. That's kind of how I've been doing my life, or I've done my life. And I love exactly what you're sharing, because you just talked about the misconceptions and the myth that people believe certain ideologies of like wealthy people. Like one of the things I got to experience, to your point, is bringing my boys, after losing everything pretty much that we had due to medical related issues. As you understand, that's why you had started the Bloom Again Foundation, and that's how you and I connected. And I realized that I had to shift something in my life if I wanted to create a difference, and then just figure it out. But the uncapped earning potential makes life, for me, being a person that likes to work, maybe a little too much. But the reason why I like working is because I want to accumulate the wealth to pass it on. So wealthy people, like one of the myths I think is like rich people are greedy. We'll say the rich phrase because we know that definition could be different for everybody, but that's not generally the case. That I find is that most people with wealth are more decisive and designate their dollars, right, in distinctive areas. That's one that I found. And then with my boys was the time that people became overnight successes, the general time frame. If you would say for yourself, I'm just going to kind of throw out this question for you, and I know you don't really view yourself, okay, I became this big success, but when was that turnaround point and how many years did it take for you?
Oh, well, I think there were a couple of points.
Stages? Okay,
But I would like to go just back to one thing that you
sure.
said about not everybody's cut out to be an entrepreneur. I absolutely agree with that. At the same time, you talk about under earning or not,
Yeah.
right? And so you could be working for a corporation and still not be acquiring wealth, because you haven't asked for enough, or you've decided to stay in a job too long, or maybe even in a company that doesn't pay as well as other companies do in the area, in the region. And so you limit yourself in those ways. And I think it's really important that you not limit yourself. You can acquire wealth working for someone else, but you have to be smart about it. If they're acquiring wealth, you should be acquiring wealth too. Okay. And you should think that you're
Love it.
entitled to that. I kind of started where I thought it was appropriate, but I worked for Arco, the oil company, for 10 years in human resources. That's really where I cut my chops. That's really where I learned, how to be a business person. If I hadn't worked there, I couldn't start my own business. So when people tell me and they're like 18, 20 years old, they want to have their own business, I say, go work for somebody else first, because that's where you're going to make your mistakes, and they're not going to cost you any money. They're going to cost somebody else money. So, and not only that, they have great benefits. That's how I paid for my PhD. Was Arco paid for my PhD because I went to school at night. So there's lots of reasons why you should want to work for someone else. Just don't let it be limiting. And I'm not saying you have to work for them and then quit. You may work for them your whole life. And certainly there are plenty of people. Look at Mary, is it Ibarra I think at General Motors, the
Yeah.
CEO of General Motors. I mean, this woman acquired wealth. She worked her way up.
Yeah.
So it's doable. Now, going back to your question about kind of overnight success. In some ways, that's true. You don't see all the work that went into it getting up to that point. But the fact is I got lucky, right? I got lucky when Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office came out. I had already written 2 other books, which
Mm.
nobody can name. um, Maybe now they can because they piggyback off of the other ones. But
Mhm.
when Corner Office came out, and it kind of touched a nerve for women around the world,
Mhm.
that almost was like an overnight success. That was like, oh my, suddenly people know who I am. As a matter of fact, I'll never forget this. This is a good story. Um, I was on the Today Show the day that the book came out, right? And this is 20 years ago. And from there, I go to the airport. And at the airport, there's a long line of people to check in at the United counter. And the woman checking people in looks at me and goes like this. I went, me? And she said, yeah, you, come up here. And she checked me in and she said, I just saw you on TV this morning. And I thought everything you said was true. And that's when I realized things were about to change. So, although my partner is very happy that I'm an author and not somebody whose face is forwarding, because, I don't walk down the street and people notice me. But yeah, but that's really what happened. And fortunately it happened, as I said, after a time when I had worked very hard to get where I was. And it's not as if I stopped working at that point. At that point, then the game picked up in some ways, because then I had to be out there and be a spokesperson almost for women in the workplace. And so it changed. But it's also about learning to capitalize on your brand, because when that happened, I remember talking to a friend who is in marketing and branding. And I said, the only problem with this is that now I'm seen as a coach for women. Now I'm seen as carrying the women's flag. That was never what part of my brand was. I mean, I was an executive coach and I worked with men and women in corporations. And she looked at me and she said, Lois, there's nothing wrong with having that as your brand. If that's what people are buying, that's what you're selling.
Yeah.
And so I embraced that. I said, okay, so this is going to be my brand from now on. And it worked, right? And so it's almost counterintuitive. And I think listeners need to understand this. It's almost counterintuitive that when you narrow your brand, when I narrowed it being a coach for everybody to, oh, now it's like she focuses on women, I got more business than ever because everybody wants an expert. So if people see you as the expert in a particular field, you're going to get more of that business than someone who's a generalist. So it's counterintuitive, but when you think about it, it makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. I actually heard that today. And I'm going to say I do a lot of education with, 8-figure coaches, et cetera. And literally, I've listened to 3 in the past 3 months that all said that exact same thing. So your wisdom that you're sharing, and it's not just about them. It's for me because I have read your books, and as you're speaking, it's good because once you are aware of the mistakes that apply to you, you've given the solutions, you remember them, or you reread because we come on different pathways of your life. So I really see those tools as essential wisdom and creating a mindset as well as a skill set to move forward from. And one of your points when you were saying about being in a job, right, and moving up, and say you want to be an entrepreneur and that's your goal. I heard someplace that go work in what you want to do, or that's aligned with what you want to do. And just like you said, learn the mistakes there, your best, learn the mistakes there, and then you can grow from there. So I love all of this wisdom. So
let me interrupt you just a second.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
I don't know if it's still around, but based on what you said, there was an organization that was called Vocation Vacation. And what it did was you could sign up to use your vacation to test out your vocation, right? And so let's say you always wanted to run a bed and breakfast. Well, there's bed and breakfasts that you have to pay, but that you will go and they will teach you what does it take to run a bed and breakfast. So Vocation Vacations. And I'm not sure if it's still around, but it was a great group.
It's worth to check out. And I love that idea. I always think about, when we're young adults and we're going off into the world and it's like, what do you want to do? Well, so many young adults struggle. They don't know because
they have no idea.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. They have no idea. And I love that idea of a vocation vacation, and even just maybe even asking somebody if you could temporarily intern with them, either pro bono or whatever. And if you don't have a job before you get there, or you're in an interim and you're looking for work, sometimes that might get you hired,
Exactly. And we used to call them informational interviews, remember?
Right.
You just go and ask people for information, and if they like you, they may wind up hiring you.
Yeah. And you just never know. I was on a group and this one person was providing an outline. This coach did not have an outline, had a different format, and everybody was asking for an outline. And this one person took it on themselves, and boom, now there's a conversation and they're getting hired in the company. So,
exactly.
It's all in, like how you said, it's like how we show up and that mindset piece. So are there maybe, I'm going to say, like, maybe some steps or tips or order, like where people should start out, maybe with mindset and how they connect to that skill set? Is there anything that you can kind of share in that arena?
Yeah, I think a couple things. Getting rich is a mindset. You know that, right? You and I have talked about this many times. Yeah. It's a mindset. You are going to attract what you put out. Yeah. And if you put out, I'm never going to get out of this hole, you're never going to get out of this hole. And so if you put out, this is going to be the year that I am going to acquire wealth, and I'm going to do it differently. Now, it's not magical thinking. You have to put teeth into it, obviously. but that's where you start out, is you start out changing your mindset. I know you and I both also believe in the law of attraction. Yes. Right? We attract to us the things that we focus on. It's just how it works. It's happened my whole life. I didn't know it was called law of attraction my whole life. I just kept doing it, and it kept working. I kept thinking, I'm going to keep doing this. And I know, Rita, you do it a lot. I was wondering if you did it at the fundraiser the other day win any of the prizes. I saw your mother won a prize.
Well, because I wasn't allowed to win.
Oh, okay.
So, what's really cool is a lot of people at my table do win because I sit with like-minded people. And so literally, I think everybody but one person at my table won.
Oh, see, there you go, because they were the law of attraction, right?
Right.
So
And
anyway, so that's where you have to start. And you almost have to start with a money mantra, right?
yes.
That I am worthy of more money. I am earning more money. I am acquiring wealth. Now, when I talk about wealth, I talk about having all the money you need to live your life the way you want, free from concerns about money. Okay. You may never have $5 million, or you may, but you may not need $5 million, right? Maybe you say, look, if I just had $500,000 in the bank and I had all my bills paid off and my house is paid off, I would be a happy woman. Great. Then you are wealthy. Remember that definition. Wealth is having all the money, or being rich is having all the money you need to live your life the way you want, free from concerns about money. So that's where you start. And then the next steps are focusing on, and how am I going to get there? Creating a plan. So you take a look at, what do I have now? You do an assessment. I'm sure you tell your clients this all the time. What do I have now? What are my assets? And where do I want to go? So you've got to have a goal. It's like I tell women, you get on a scale and you know what you want that number to read, don't you? But you don't know what you want the bank account to read, right? If I were to say, how much money do you need to be rich? Most women, they can't give you a number, but they know what the scale number should be. So again, what do you have? And then where do you want to go? And then we put in the plan that says, okay, if I want to get there, am I currently in the job that's going to get me there? Well, no, I'm only earning minimum wage. Okay, what do you love to do? Okay, is there a way to build something around that? If you're only earning minimum wage, does that mean you need to get some kind of a certification? And I used to say degree, but nowadays the degree isn't important, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, do you need to get some certification or some special training? What is going to make you different than the competition? That's what you always want to focus on. Even if you're earning minimum wage, what makes you different than everybody else you work with? If you're not different, you're not going to get anything more than anybody else. So again, we go back to, how are you going to build your brand? Either the brand where you currently are or where you want to be. And so you think about, what do I love to do? I mean, there's that old book, right? Do what you love and the money will follow. It's not that easy. I can tell you from experience, it's not that easy. But if you do what you love, you're going to want to keep doing it, right? I mentioned I worked at Arco, and I learned a lot at Arco, and Arco was very good to me. But I didn't get up in the morning and say, oh, great, I get to go to work today, right? There wasn't a morning I woke up and said that, okay? But when I quit and I started my own business, every day I wanted to get up and go to work. And I wanted to work harder. And I wanted to work 12 hours days and sometimes more. So that's the thing about, if you're doing what you love, you're going to want to keep doing it and do more of it. And then that'll enable you to distinguish yourself. I had a woman, I used to have a call-in show on KABC, and it was Eye on Your Career. And people would call in, right? And this woman called in and she said, I run a nursery school or preschool. And I want to know, how do I market my preschool so I get more business? And I immediately said, what makes your preschool better than everyone else's? And she couldn't tell me. And I said, until you can tell me that, you can't get more business. You have to distinguish yourself, create a distinctive brand, either internally or externally. So these are just some of the few first steps. Another one is you surround yourself with like-minded people. You just said that, Rita. At your table at this fundraiser, there are people who are like-minded, and they all wound up winning prizes. At my table, I think one or two people won a prize. right? So, and only one of them won my basket of books only because she really wanted that and put a lot of raffle tickets in it. So,
with the intention, she got what she needed. That's
she got what
perfect.
she needed. She used all her tickets, but she got what she needed.
That's what she
Um,
wanted. That's what she needed. Beautiful.
yeah. So anyway, so these are just some ideas for where to start. But in my book, Nice Girls Don't Get Rich, I talk about 75 mistakes we make on the path to wealth.
Yeah.
And some of them are big and some of them are small. And I still do some of them. One of them I talk about is, when you sit down to watch TV, put your phone or your iPad as far away from you as you can, because if you don't, you start looking at Amazon, right? And something pops up. I mean, they've got the algorithms. Jen, you're laughing, right?
It's so funny. Yes.
Do you do that?
I just have noticed, like, you'd be talking about something or you're watching TV and all of a sudden you're on Amazon and the idea pops up for something that you were just like, oh, is it reading my mind? No, it's got the algorithms that tell you what to buy. So I've seen
Exactly.
that happen. Yeah.
And all of a sudden I have to have this. And you may say, well, you know what? It's only $25 here or $50 here. But what if you took that $100 a month? I mean, and you know this, Rita. If you took the $100 a month you spend on either McDonald's or Starbucks, I mean, I won't spend any money at those places because I know it's a waste. Not only is it not healthy, it's a waste of time, a waste of money.
Mhm.
And so, sometimes I'm out and I'm hungry and I think, you'll be home in 15 minutes. You go home and you make yourself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That would be like just fine.
Right.
And so it's those kinds of things. If you started socking away that money, once you start thinking about where am I spending money that I don't have to spend it, and you start socking it away and you say, well, what difference does $100 a month make? Rita, you could probably answer this better than I can. If you put away $1,200 this year, what's that $1,200 worth 10 years from now or 20 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's probably depending on your age,
Yeah.
it could be up to 200, it could be $250,000. If you're doing that for your baby or your grandbaby and you're doing $100 a month, by the time they're 60, 65, they could be millionaires. It's crazy.
It is crazy.
It's crazy good. That's the thing.
Well, and that's what people need to understand is that it's not just the money you put away. Benjamin Franklin said, compound interest is a thing of beauty. It turns all of your lead into gold.
Oh, I love that one.
Right? Because compound interest, I mean, once you start seeing the compound interest, you want to keep seeing it.
Yep.
That was very motivating to me. Once I had the first 100,000 and then I saw, oh my, look, this just keeps growing no matter how much I put in it.
Yeah.
And so you can do that too. Hey, look, the kid who slept in the dining room with the train going by can do it. You could do it too, whether it's start your own business or work for someone else.
I love it. So as my wheels are turning, as they often do, when I talk to amazing women like you of impact and wisdom, I keep on coming up with, I come up with where people get to know about a financial positioning system. So I call it an FPS, like a GPS. But what you are talking about is, for me, a FPS also, but it's a focus positioning system. So where their focus, it's like where their focus goes, things grow.
You follow, yeah.
And you follow it. And so I encourage everybody to get Lois's books, because the mistakes alone, when that's how you get your positioning, right? She has gone through the landmine for you. She's gone on the other side. She's come back to us to share and show us the way so that we don't have to go through those same things. And that is one of the most powerful gifts that someone can give you. And if you don't know about power compound interest, by the way, there are ways to go search about that. Einstein calls it the eighth wonder of the world, and you can go check that out. So Einstein, Ben Franklin, I don't know, these people know a little bit of something. Einstein's estate is still around. And he's not been for a few years. So might want to wonder like why that works. And I think that works with when we share good things too. Compounding effects, I call them collateral goodness, happens in the world, and you get to meet amazing people and share stories so that we can help so many others. So thank you for really sharing all of that. I want us to close with maybe one fun fact about you.
One fun fact. This will relate to money, so I'll use this one.
I like that.
I'm Jewish. I lived with the nuns.
Oh my God.
Fun fact, right? Nobody knows this. When I was in my 20s, I worked at Barry International University in Miami, Florida, because at that time, my greatest aspiration was to be a dorm director. And I was a dorm director, okay? And it was a Catholic school. So I lived on campus with all the nuns, and I was a dorm director. And at one point, this is a summer, and we didn't work in the summer, and the career placement officer came to me and said, Lois, would you like a job working for ARCO? I had no idea what ARCO was. Working for ARCO, writing job descriptions this summer. And I said, oh, I like to write. Sure, I'll write job descriptions. And I went there and I made more that summer than I made in a whole year being a dorm director. And I said, okay, these nuns may have taken vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, but I didn't. And I went to work for ARCO, and it was life-changing. So never think that small things aren't going to make a huge difference.
Love that. And even
very good advice.
Very good advice. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. How can people reach out to you?
They can reach out to me on my website, which is Dr. Lois Frankel, DrLoisFrankel.com. And they may also want to go there because I have free inventories you can take. How to get rich inventories, how to get the corner office inventory. There's free inventories on there you can take. So go to the website and take some free inventories.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing and for everything, sharing all your knowledge and information today, the books, and the leadership of how we can also get to show up and do extraordinary things in our lives like you and making that pathway for us. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure speaking with you both.
Thank you.